Welcome back. We are joined once again by Bill Walton. We're talking with him about stuff that matters a lot, not just to financiers and the so called masters of the universe, but to ordinary folks, probably like you, who, whether you know it or not, have your money invested in China because Larry Fink and Ray Dalio and Steve Schwartzman and others have been incessantly putting a portion of their investments that you underwrite into various companies, including, if you can believe it, not only state owned enterprises of Chinese communism, but also the People's Liberation Army's owned companies. This is madness. And Bill, there has been some talk, and our Committee on the Present Danger of China's chairman, Brian Kennedy, wrote a letter last week to the chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission asking whether, in fact, we are looking at a possible change in the behavior of the Chinese. Back in 2013, with Joe Biden's help, then as vice president, as you know, a deal was struck whereby the Chinese not only had access to our capital markets and all of that investor money, but they had it on a preferential basis. They didn't have to conform to our statutory and regulatory arrangements intended to protect investors. There's some talk that they're now going to begin conforming to those laws. We wanted to know what Chairman Gensler thought of all of that and whether it's real. And more generally, where's the MOU? We'd like to know where that memorandum of understanding is. It's no longer available publicly. What do you make of all of this? And is it likely that the Chinese are going to start playing by the rules?
Well, Frank, you know the history. China goes back 3,000 years, and they still are talking about their century of humiliation when the Brits got them hooked on opioids or opium, and they've never forgotten it. And they don't see any law in the world, any international law, any U.S. law, any law you can think of in any other jurisdiction except their own, applying to them. And so look at what they did with the World Trade Agreements. They basically signed up and then did exactly what they wanted to do, which is not comply with any of the agreements. What's happening with this SEC now is that you and I've talked about the fact that Chinese companies listed in the United States have not been audited by anything other than Chinese auditing firms who are notoriously lax at covering and pulling red flags on things that you and I would care about as investors.
Yeah.
And the
No,
Chinese
the
now
Chinese
started
say
not.
that those financials are state secrets. They're not about to make those public. The last time I checked.
Exactly. And now the Chinese are beginning to have second thoughts about how tough they want to be on this. And they're saying, well, gee, maybe we'll let somebody else audit our companies in order to let you keep them listed on the U.S. exchanges and the other international exchanges, NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange. The odds of them not gaining this are zero. Whatever they agree to, there's going to be something behind the scenes that we ought to be very suspicious of. And if we wanted to be doing the right thing, we ought to say, look, China's declared itself an enemy of the United States. We should not let the Chinese companies have access to our capital markets and putting our American investors' savings at risk.
Amen. Bill, I couldn't have said it better, and you nailed it. Let me ask you about one other piece of this. The Chinese, going back to what you talked about earlier, Bill, have begun rolling out internally, and I think will shortly be doing so internationally. A con- well, it remains to be seen whether it's a convertible yuan, a cryptocurrency issued by the Central Bank of China. What do you think is likely to be the upshot of that? Will it become, as the Chinese clearly hope, the alternative to the dollar, something they've been trying to knock off its pedestal as the reserve currency of the world?
Well, pardon my mixing my metaphors, but the cryptocurrencies are the big gold rush that's going on now. And the libertarians initially thought that cryptocurrencies would be something that could exist outside of control of the various states around the world. Well, the various states of the world don't like that, and they're beginning to create their own cryptocurrencies. And nobody really knows how this is quite going to play out, and who or what might be dominant. The benefit of Bitcoin, it has no board of directors, has no ownership, and theoretically is free from coercion and corruption. But we don't know. The jury's still out. The idea that China is going to create a digital currency is a nice idea, but there are 140. No, I may exaggerate somewhat, but there are about 100 countries that are thinking about creating a digital currency. And if you think that's a safe haven, look what happened to the truckers in Canada. Yes, they had their bank accounts frozen, but they also had their Bitcoin accounts frozen. And I'm not conversant with all the details, but the place where people thought they had their safe haven for their capital was not a safe haven.
And this is the thing that's so concerning is if those central banks have their way, and particularly the Chinese one will, they will be able to manipulate those
Well,
notes, whatever they are, coins, crypto coins, specifically, Bill, with respect to programming them so that they may not be usable in certain places or only for a certain period of time or only if you play by their rules or
well,
only if you're using it in a way they approve of. I mean, these are the sorts of things that I think are clearly a problem with any of these state controlled enterprises. No?
Frank, the acronym is DBC,
No.
CG, Central Bank
Central
Digital
bank
Currencies.
digital currencies,
And
right?
they'd like to eliminate the middleman, which is your local bank, which used to be on the corner, and have you bank directly with, for example, the Federal Reserve. But what
Right.
that does is it allows them to track where you're spending your money. And think about the Chinese social credit system. They
Right.
give you points for good behavior.
What could possibly go wrong with all of that? Bill, we have to leave it at that for the moment. This is a point to which we will return as we have done now several times, because I think it is a coming thing. Programmable currency manipulated by a hostile government. Could that include our own? Watch this space. Bill Walton, thank you for the great work you do at the Bill Walton Show. I am privileged to be one of your guests from time to time, and I just commend you for what you do with it and hope everyone will be following it closely. In the meantime, I hope the rest of you will follow us here at Securing America. I hope you found today's program to be edifying and to help you better fight the good fight for our freedoms.